Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Exploring the Parasha class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz and Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Oh, Shabbat Shalom.
We are going to be doing this podcast for Parasha Vayeshev, and we hope that you all had a lovely Thanksgiving. And, sorry not to see you in person, but glad that we are able to still send you the class and hope that you will enjoy it. And I'll turn things over to Rabbi Shapiro.
So usually when I talk about Vayeshev, I wind up singing some kind of musical interlude out of the Joseph story. I'm sure Rabbi Schatz is disappointed that that's not currently happening. And the part of the Parsha that we're going to be talking about definitely is not featured in any long-running Broadway musical that I know of. What about you, Rabbi Schatz? Have you ever heard of this in any Broadway musical?
Heard of what?
Is it part of the Parsha that we're talking about today?
Oh, no.
Although maybe at some point, maybe it'll be like, I don't know. Like how they eventually made Wicked off of Wizard of Oz. Maybe like there'll be sort of like a, I don't know. We saw part of Wicked on the Macy's parade today, which is why I was thinking about it. Did you watch any of the Macy's parade? You said you were going to. You didn't.
I wanted to see the performances, but then I was doing other things.
You were roasting vegetables.
That was some of the things I was doing, yes.
And finding a baster.
No. I had a baster.
But you would find it. Okay, baster notwithstanding. We are going to be talking about part of the story of Tamar, which, as mentioned a moment ago, definitely has not had any catchy show tunes written about it, at least that I know of, although it's a wide world out there on the internet. So I don't want to eat my words. I'll leave it to others though to Google show tunes about Tamar and see if there's anything out there. I'm not going to start singing. Basically, we're going to be. I'm going to use. I'm not going to go through the whole narrative in too great of detail. I think that's probably okay. What do you think? I don't want to spoil anyone's Thanksgiving appetite. Rabbi Schatz, do you want to go into great detail in the Tamar narrative?
No, we don't have
to. Long and somewhat convoluted and very archaic marriage customs short. Judah gets married. She has sons. One of the sons gets married in turn. And basically Tamar is the name of the wife of his son's wife. And both of his sons, two of his three sons pass away before Tamar has kids, which means that then his third son, Shelah, is supposed to in turn get married to Tamar so that she will bear sons off of that lineage. But he is scared that because his sons Er and Onan have died, he is scared that Shelah will die as well, so he refuses to have Shelah marry Tamar. In due time, Judah's wife passes away as well. And Judah, how am I doing so far, Rabbi Schatz? Judah, who is now single, goes out. Talking a lot about going out lately. Judah goes out and he happens upon this lovely young woman who has disguised herself, and he sleeps with her, not knowing that she is her daughter-in-law. If people did not yet know the story of Tamar when they turned on this podcast, they are in for a very interesting holiday weekend. I am not making any of this up. It is not just a tryptophan hallucination. This is all really in the Torah. And after he sleeps with Tamar, she asks for some type of payment, and she says you should leave your seal and your cord. In the Hebrew, it's chotamecha uftilecha, chotem, like that which you seal, that people know it's, if you're signing some sort of official document, people know it's yours. And also, the cord is also something that's basically very, very personal, that would be uniquely his. And he moves on, and she keeps those things, right? He didn't pay her, so she keeps those things. Over time, Tamar is ready to have the child 3 months later, when it's clear that she's pregnant. Judah is told that nothing like a good old-fashioned translation. Your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot. In fact, she is with child by harlotry. With child by harlotry, a good name for a death metal debut album. And Judah says, bring her out and let her be burned. Not the most tolerant stance to take. How did I do on that summary, Rabbi Schatz? Did I leave out any bits? No? I mean, I left some, it was condensed. But I think that caught most of the highlights. Okay, and we're going to talk in a little more detail about verses 25 and 26. He mutzeit, she was brought out. Vehi sholcha et chamiha lemor. And she sent this message to her father-in-law, leish asher elelo, to the person who these things are his, like it's intentionally vague. Anochi hara, the person, whoever these things just so happen to belong to, I am pregnant by that person. Haker na lami hachotemet vehaptilim vehamate ha'ela. Whoever these things belong to, this seal and this cord and these staff. Now she's asking it as a question. Whose seal and cord and staff are these? Like you could say she's being, either this is one of the earliest documented cases of being passive aggressive that we have in Western civilization, or she's being at least somewhat protective, if not pointed, about his identity. Basically saying, whose do you think these are? Whoever these are, that's who I am pregnant by, right? Vayaker Yehuda, and Judah, not surprisingly, recognizes that stuff and has be great to get a little bit of a biblical window into his inner monologue at this point. I'm sure it would feature a number of words that can't be featured uncensored in daytime television. Judah recognizes them. Vayomer Sadka Mimeni, translated here as, she is more in the right than I. And I think you could, well, I'll leave that there for now. Ki al ken lo netaniha l'shela b'ni. Because, what was that?
Netatiha.
Yeah, that's what I said. Did I say that?
Netaniha.
I thought I said netatiha. Rabbi Schatz is probably right. Netatiha l'shela b'ni. Because indeed I did not give her, I'll use that, right, it's a direct translation. I didn't give her to Shelabni. I didn't follow that custom to marry her off to him. Lo yasaf od ledata. And then that's sort of a comment through the narrative voice, and he was not, again, intimate with her, Tamar. Okay. Lots to say about this. I'll say sort of the two primary themes that I think are noteworthy to me, sort of through this lens of, I think this is more of a spiritual growth than a mental health kind of afternoon, but who knows where we'll eventually wind up, as is always the case. The first thought, which I have through the Tamar piece of this, is it's not necessarily easy to hold people accountable, and certainly not to hold people accountable in a way that can be heard. It's easy to either just kind of swallow your feelings and not be direct with someone. And it's not necessarily, I don't know if it's easy, but oftentimes holding people accountable can sound a lot more like an accusation at best than actually finding a way to do so in a way that is actually saying, hey, you did this thing, probably should take some accountability for it, right? She manages, and interesting as well, she's about to get burned. So it's not necessarily the time when someone would have the most, if I'll say it like this, if I was about to get lit on fire, I don't think my people skills would be at their best. That's just me. So the fact that she's able to find a way to hold Yehuda accountable here, in a way that he can hear, in a way that is direct, in a way that lands and he's able to respond to, I think is pretty impressive. It's not always an easy thing to do. And in the second verse, it's also not easy to say, I was wrong, or I made a mistake, or this is something that I should have done differently, and to take ownership for that, and to try to, to take ownership of that. I'll sort of leave that there. And I don't think it's, there are a few better roots that carry that meaning when you see that phrase, tzadka mimeni, right? Translated as she is more in the right than I. But, the root of tzedek, of righteousness, of justice, tzedakah, right? We can riff on that root for a while. But the idea that in this narrative, in terms of what's happening here, she has acted more justly than I have. She is the one who is more righteous than I, even though it is a convoluted and vaguely icky story of the players in this narrative. She is really the one who is more justified in her actions than I am. So I think there's plenty more I could say there. But Rabbi Schatz, what do you think?
Well, typically we would do kushiot, but there's no one here, so I don't think we're going to do that.
You want me to try to bring my kids in to see if they can ask questions about the story?
Do you want them to know the story?
I mean, eventually.
I would just point out that I think there's something fascinating about the Dina story having happened last week and this story happening this week. And though they're quite different in what happens and how the woman is treated, they're not different in kind of like the woman's function. Dina, thing just fell in my house, and okay.
Was it a roasted vegetable?
No, I don't know what it is, but okay.
Do you want to go check?
No. But I do think that Dina's role is somewhat because Dina is silenced. Dina seems to be in a lower role, whereas Tamar actually really takes some action here. And though, yes, the word can be righteous, like she's definitely just smarter than he is. Like she figures out a way to kind of outwit him, and to get what she wants and what she feels like is needed. And again, though the stories are very different, it's just showing the different ways in which women had to kind of assert themselves, and if they didn't, what happened, and if they did, how kind of backwards it had to be. And I just think that's really fascinating that like Tamar isn't speaking up, right? She's playing a trick on someone, and Dina doesn't say anything at all. So it's just interesting to me that, especially because the brothers are connected to this story as well. Interesting how we're not necessarily learning from our own history as to how to treat women or how women should be allowed to voice how they want to be treated or how their roles should be expressed.
It is interesting. I mean, you mentioned the trickeration. I sort of skipped over the part of the chapter where basically Judah tries to get his stuff back, and he can't. He can't find Tamar. It's like Where's Waldo, but with a female character in the Bible who's being subjected, except rather than a skinny dude with a striped hat and long sleeve t-shirt. Similar. No, not similar.
Oh yeah.
Sort of picture her hiding like various ancient Near Eastern scenes with lots of stuff going. That'd be fun. That'd be a fun kids book.
But that's the other thing, is that I don't know that she had to actually do that much work, right? Like
to hide.
Yeah, like women weren't thought of as being smart enough or capable enough, I don't think, of even being able to do what she did, and therefore she gets away with it, because when you are unassuming, you would never think, oh, well, of course she's hiding, or
he does go looking for her. I mean, in verses 21 and 22, Judah sends someone to go try to find her, and he can't find her.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I mean, she plays the part, right? But because she wants to have kids, right? That's the motivating factor in this whole story. She wants to be able to have kids, and Judah's not giving her that opportunity, which I think goes back to your point about the role of women in these narratives. It does seem, from what we can tell in the narrative, that's what she wants, but she's not being given that opportunity, and so she needs to take, I think is relatively fair to call, drastic measures to try to get to that outcome.
Yeah. But again, like if she were just a free agent or a free woman, as we hope most women are, like she wouldn't have had to have done that.
Right. The only avenue that is being normatively provided for her is within the context of a marriage, of like her first one brother-in-law, and now hopefully, I'm putting in quotes, which people cannot see on the podcast, hopefully her next brother-in-law. It's like, well, it didn't work out with that other guy. Right. Maybe your next brother-in-law will be a better match.
Actually, I hadn't thought about this until right this second, but it actually kind of goes back to the class that Rabbi Kligfeld and I spoke about in terms of handmaids, right? That these handmaids, well, I shouldn't say the handmaid themselves, but the commander's wife was often trying to just have a baby in any which way they could, similar to like Sarah in the Bible or Rachel and Leah in the Bible.
And now Tamar.
Yeah, but for them, they used other women to just get what they wanted, whereas Tamar was just like, I'll just use my own body to get what I want. And I really hadn't made this connection, but it is a type of subjugation. It's just that you're doing it to yourself, as opposed to doing it to someone else. And we could have a whole class about like which one's worse, right? Is it telling another person that they must do this for you, or is it that you think so, maybe not lowly, but you just assume that that's what your body is for, and that you will be able to kind of get what you want by using your body, that you are then just able to do it that way. And in neither case is it, and Rabbi Kligfeld and I were very intentional about this, in neither case does it seem to be the same as the way that we in the 21st century define rape, right? Like the handmaids knew what they were doing in that household. And it, Tamar is not raping him to get what she wants. I don't. I
mean, she is taking agency here, right? I mean, I don't.
Yeah. I a story where that's like him actually laying with her by force.
Right. I mean, I think it's not particularly of the narratives you've listed, even though Tamar is being kind of conscripted into the only way in which you can normatively have kids is through a certain marriage sort of hierarchy. Mm-hmm. She has, from what I can tell, at least by far the most agency in terms of how she handles her sexuality and her reproductive ability, right? Like she wants to have kids, she's going to find a way to have kids. It's not particularly complimentary of how men approach sexuality that Judah is sort of out and about. He sees someone. It's his daughter-in-law. He doesn't even notice her. He has sex with her. He doesn't notice it's his daughter-in-law. And then 3 months later, he's like, oh, no. That's, not sort of not the best comment on men's awareness around getting their needs met. In terms of how you think, oh no, it was my daughter. Not a great moment. So of the two, from my perspective, Tamar has her stuff together much more in the story than Judah does, right? She somehow finds a way within the very restrictive circumstances she's in to still get what she wants. Interesting. I mean, she winds up having kids. I'll make one more comment on that in a second. She's not married.
Right.
She's a single mom with twins.
Yeah.
Which I haven't done extensive reading on it, but I think is relatively uncommon.
Yeah.
Well,
especially because a man was the only thing that gave you any kind of safety or any kind of future back in those days. Think
she had a tent sort of kind of next to Judah's, but he didn't want to look over there too often, so sort of an awkward family brunch.
I mean, without reading too much into the story, I'm sure that she ended up marrying someone who took care of her. I think there probably was very little capacity or just because she was living amongst a clan of lots of boys, men, that they could take.
I mean, the way Judah acts here is sort of like a college freshman on spring break. So, we can.
I guess that's true.
My sense is that she's sort of like part of Judah's camp, but sort of has her own tent and their family Thanksgiving dinners were just slightly awkward. Yeah. Hey, that's Grandpa. Well, sure. Remember that? I'm my own grandpa. Remember that song? You never heard that song? You've never heard I'm my own grandpa? I'm my own grandpa. I'm my own grandpa.
No.
It sounds funny, I know, but it really is so. I'm my own grandpa. You never heard that?
No.
Well, now you have. I bet Dale has. We'll ask Dale.
Yeah.
We've gotten a bit distracted, which is unusual for us, particularly when no one else is here. The one other narrative piece that I want to make sure to mention is that one of the twins, we are told that this funky union, which would be a great name for a rock band, that this funky union eventually is the Davidic line, that King David, who is from the tribe of Judah, that one of his ancestors is Peretz, who is one of the two twins that are born are Peretz and Zerach. That Peretz is one of David's ancestors, and there's plenty in our tradition about how heroes come from unexpected lineages. This is also for those of you who are pining for Shavuot, and I know many of you are. Rabbi Schatz just raised her hand because she loves organizing Shavuot. For those of you who are pining for Shavuot, we also hear about this from the Ruth story, right? That it seems to be sort of an unlikely union through which a redemptive line comes. But this is the prequel. This is the Ruth story before it was cool. That this is also a union that is unusual in how it comes about, and yet eventually leads to no less than Hamelech David, El David Reno, as his friends called him. And I think, there is something to that, not to lean on it too much, but I think both the actions of holding people accountable and owning up to your mistakes, those actions are really being held up in this story, I think, is at least my sense of it. as someone who makes numerous mistakes every single hour of the day, it's not always easy to say, hey, I messed up. And it's really important. When I worked at Beit Tshuva, Rabbi Mark would and Harriet would talk about how, the 5 hardest words in the English language are, oops, I made a mistake. Because it's tough. It's tough to say I messed up. And Judah does it here, right? Which is not to say necessarily that he is the hero of the story. I think from my perspective, at least, Tamar is sort of takes her place in this role as the primary actor, as we were talking about a second ago. And in that realm as well, that Judah is able to say, oh, maybe this isn't actually about me. Maybe this is about someone else. And to step aside and give her the space that she's trying to claim, I think is important.
I also think that he, by not giving her rightful husband for her to be able to have kids, he takes away her voice and her really her future in the scheme of how the Torah works. And so she realizes that she's going to have to take it all into her own hands. And so not only does he say, oops, I made a mistake, but he realizes, wow, if I had just said, here's my son, which was what he was supposed to do, none of this would have happened. She would have been perfectly happy. So it wasn't so much that she wanted to be with that son and he didn't want it to happen, but more so just that that's how things worked back in the day. And she knew that, and she knew to be, I keep on wanting to say the word successful, but really just have any status whatsoever in her lineage and in her current life. She needed to be married to somebody or at least bring children into the world. And so she just figures, okay, well, I'm going to take this matter into my own hands. So he's definitely not the hero. And she teaches him a lesson.
Yeah.
She teaches him a lesson that if you just do the right thing the first time around, you don't have to say, oh, I made a mistake, and then probably feel pretty badly about whatever happens to you, but rather just because we all know people who make mistakes and then just it snowballs. And so all of a sudden now you're in a much bigger, whether it's a lie or mistake or whatever it is, you're all of a sudden now so much deeper down that hole than you expected to be. If at the beginning you just said, oh, actually, I forgot to send that email, or, oh, sorry, no, I didn't have that conversation. It's a lot harder to say, but it's a lot easier to remedy the outcome, because then you can recognize that the outcome that has made lots of problems down the line could have just been taken care of in the beginning by saying, no, sorry, I actually didn't remember to do that.
Right. Yeah. And the one piece I'll add on to that is, I think it seems to be from what we can tell. Oh, hi, Leah. I'm recording something with Rabbi Schatz. Do you think you can go to the bathroom in another room? Els? Yeah. Can you go to the bathroom in another room, please? Thanks.
Leah Shapiro. What a kid.
You didn't know. This is the fun of recording from home. And not having a ton of space. It's like a throwback. It's like a throwback to earlier pandemic days.
Yeah.
Is that we actually hear explicitly, right? That the reason Judah doesn't have Tamar marry off his third son is because he's afraid. He's afraid that his third son will die. He says, right, Pen Yamut Gamhu Ke'achaf, that maybe this son of mine will also die. And if I'm in a place of fear, I'm much more likely to make a mistake. So I think it's a piece of that as well, is trying to not only acknowledge the challenge of saying, oops, I made a mistake, but catching yourself if you notice you're in a place where you're feeling scared or upset or whatever it is that makes you more likely to mess something up, and saying, oh, hold on, wait a minute, I'm feeling a certain way. What's actually the next right action to take here, instead of just getting wrapped up in the circumstance, and like you were saying, and then being in a position where things could kind of snowball, right? That mindfulness and awareness in the moment before you go, kind of too far down that road and wind up having to, constantly keep all those balls in the air.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I have anything else to add to that. I agree.
You agree?
I mean, I think you are agreeing with me by saying the statement, but yes, I agree also.
You agree with my agreement with you?
I do.
Well, who am I to argue with that?
Yeah, good point.
Rabbi Schatz, do you have anything else you'd like to add beyond agreeing with me?
Well, I'd be curious to know, I have a few, I have like the Ramban and Ha'emek Davar and Orchot, can't speak, Orchot Tzadikim, which I have no idea what that is, but I could look it up, I guess. But curious to see what you had and see if these things fit in it. I really focused most in all of my preparation on what it meant that because a lot of the commentators say in their commentaries that's I'm just looking for the Hebrew. Sorry, give me a second. Tzadka is similar to righteous, as opposed to, I kind of liked how you said justice, actually. I like the idea of it being like just or accurate or correct. And that, so that's what I focused on. Yes.
So you like my translation better, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I actually do. I do like your Well, I like the idea of using it as justice, more so than
tzedek tirdof, as some might say.
That is a phrase that also uses that word. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts?
I'd love to hear anything additional you'd like to share.
I was going to give you any more thoughts. Okay, fine. So Ha'emek Davar says that he's actually translated as, let me see if I can read the Hebrew, Yoter mimeni, like more so than me. But it says Vayomer Yehuda tzadka mimeni, that Judah said that she is more righteous from me. And so Ha'emek Davar is actually translated as she is more righteous than me, as opposed to like coming from, that he needs to be kind of the exemplar, but that she's just more righteous. Again, I don't love the word righteous here, but maybe more right, or
more in the right than I am.
More in the right, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And then he goes on to say, Ha'emek Davar goes on to say, her intentions were pure, whereas mine were not. Which goes back to, I guess, what we were talking about before, which is like she was trying to get at this goal of hers that she knew was not going to happen any other way, and that his reasonings for not giving her husband were not righteous, right, and were not just. And so I appreciated that piece as well, because the commentators aren't always do not always skew towards the women in these stories. So I appreciated that he went in her direction. Thoughts on that? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that translation of tzadka mimeni more. We're not necessarily staying in our verses all that well, or I'm not necessarily staying in our verses all that well.
That's our verse.
No. That was a lead-in to me saying something.
Oh. I was like, was that the wrong verse?
That was going to be a transitional phrase.
Oh, sorry, continue.
You're doing great.
Thanks. I'm trying really hard.
This is mere verses after. See, I'm going to something else. Mere verses after, Judah's the one who sells Joseph down the proverbial river, right? So this is a parsha in which Judah is not doing great on the seeing people for their humanity front. And if just a few verses earlier he has been the one, you can make the argument that he's sparing Joseph's life because they're selling him instead of killing him, but selling into slavery is still not a top 10 brotherly moment. Right. And the next chapter, accidentally sleeping with your daughter-in-law because you're not giving her the respect she deserves to have a family of her own, also not a top 10 family member moment. So Judah not exactly killing the game for much of the first part of this Parsha. Has a moment where he's able to say, man, this is really going sideways on me. And of course, then a bit later on, I will save my Calypso for a few weeks from now. But he is the one who intercedes on Benjamin's behalf. So even though he's a character who has made some mistakes, it seems like thanks to Tamar, right, who is the one who calls him to account, it does seem like there's some lasting behavioral change here, which is also not a given, right? People make mistakes. I can make a mistake, say, oops, I shouldn't have done that, and then make the same mistake the next week, right? Making a mistake, being called out for it and saying, oops, is not necessarily, ideally, but not necessarily a predictor of future changes in behavior. So I think that, again, that idea of tzad kami meni, it seems like it's indicating a shift, right? It seems like it's a real moment of insight that he's able to have, that there's a sustained behavior, right? So from someone who back-to-back prakim, not really seeing people for people, into someone who is able to say she's right, later on is able to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be selling our brothers into slavery, the little things.
Learning from your actions.
Yeah, which some might call tshuva.
Oh, and that, yes.
What were you going to say?
I said growth, but yes.
Oh, tshuva and growth. Yeah. Gam v'gam.
Indeed. So the Orchot Tzadikim was originally named Sefer Hamidot. It is an anonymous author, so the fact that I didn't know who wrote it means that,
you're in good company.
Good company.
With every other person who's ever heard of it.
Correct. It's a book of Jewish ethical teachings, and it was written in Germany in the Middle Ages. So supposedly it's a book that follows the structure of The Improvement of the Moral Qualities by Solomon ibn Gabriel. I don't think that's how you say his name in Hebrew. Gabriel, I think is how you say it in Hebrew, but that's okay. We're going to go with what Safaria is telling me. And adds teachings from the Rambam and others. Rabbi Shapiro is laughing at me. You're more than do you know how to say it better than I do?
I'm just enjoying the random moment of better know a commentator with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz. This is great.
Well, because there's an actual street name in Israel, and it is pronounced differently than Safaria is pronouncing it. So I just wanted to. Okay.
Better know a commentator. This week, sponsored by.
Anyway, but I'm going to share this teaching by this anonymous person from the Orchot Tzadikim. Give it a second to go back there. Okay. So do you want me to share this? Would you like to see it? You're also a visual learner, even though people. Here you go. Great. Well, maybe you will on this. Okay. And of course, if people credit him, meaning Judah, with good deeds he did not do, he should not rejoice at this, but on the contrary, feel great pain in his heart that he should have gotten credit for something he did not do. Also, in the case where somebody told evil tales concerning him, if these are true, he should not seek to twist the truth and thus clear himself, but do as Judah, who said, she is more in the right than I am. So what this, again, this is supposed to be a bunch of moral teaching. So it's not saying, when I said him, meaning Judah, that's not what the Orchot Tzadikim was referring to. I was just putting Judah into this commentary. But basically the Orchot Tzadikim is just saying, if people credit a person with doing good deeds that they didn't do, they shouldn't be glad that they got the credit, but in fact they should be almost sad that they didn't think to do it first, right? Or that someone else is not getting the credit that you are then getting. And then he goes on to saying he should not try to contradict the man that told these tales, nor should he hate him because of the revealed matter, but he should bow, humbly before the Creator, that again, there's a lot of he's here. So that the person has revealed a little of much that could have been revealed in order to rebuke the person and correct him, that he might return to God. So again, this is just pushing us to imagine that more could have been done and not to take the credit where credit isn't due, in terms of if they had not done a good thing but should have done a good thing. And that Judah is being used here as the exemplar in terms of saying, and interesting, of course, that in the Middle Ages that it's a man saying that a woman did better than he did, right? That's a big deal here. That not so much that a man would say, oh, that guy did something better than I did, which is the general way that we would understand the commentary, but all the more so if a man can say, well, she did better than I did. So I just thought this was a very interesting way of kind of bringing it into even though this isn't a modern text, into modernity in terms of how we think of the ways in which we are given credit or do things in the world that we either deserve credit or should be embarrassed that have been done, and therefore obviously not get credit for them, but be able to say, I shouldn't have done that, or someone else, is deserving of the praise and not me. Do you have any thoughts on this, Rabbi Shapiro?
I mean, I think it's of a piece with a lot of the themes we've been talking about in terms of, if somebody says something about him, he should not seek to twist the truth and then clear himself. And I think, it's like any rule doesn't come out of silence, right? And anything that you're being told, don't do that. Well, it's probably because it's something that you otherwise might do, like don't drive too fast on the freeway. Well, it's probably because people want to drive faster than the speed limit, right? So here too, he should not seek to twist the truth and try to clear himself. Well, that's because that's a very human thing to try to do. If you get caught doing something, most of our initial impulse, something we kind of need to unlearn, is saying, oh no, I didn't do that. That was the whatever, you should just say, no, you're right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done that. That's not necessarily our go-to impulse. Right. And it's important to, I would say particularly here, you're mentioning the gender piece and how unusual that is, particularly if you're in a role where you might otherwise be caught by someone who in the culture that you're in seems to be of quote unquote lesser status than you, and feeling like you really got caught up in something, instead of using your status and your privilege to say, oh, no, that person is crazy. I would never do something like that, which is unfortunately a pattern we still see happening often, to say, no, this was something I did that I wasn't supposed to do, and letting it at that, and not trying to like justify it, right? The word justify, justice is in there too, not trying to justify it, but just saying that's actually what it is. It's not easy. Not easy.
Okay, well, Rabbi Shapiro, do you have any final thoughts?
Good job, eventually, Judah. Good job finding a way to make it work tomorrow. Good job, Rabbi Schatz, recording a podcast. And mediocre job, me. And tune in next week. We'll find out what dropped in Rabbi Schatz's apartment.
It ended up, I figured it out. It was kids throwing things outside. It had nothing to do with my apartment, or house.
Now, why would people listen next week? You just killed this. That was like the teaser. I was building intrigue.
We'll do Joseph stuff next week.
Tune in next week to find out if something else drops in Rabbi Schatz's apartment between now and then.
Thank you all for listening. It is cliche to say, but we are very grateful for our listeners and for the fact that you come and learn with us every week.
All 1.5 of you.
And no. And
it's our average listenership, I think. I still think.
Okay.
Right?
Every time that Rabbi Shapiro says something like this, we end up getting 75 emails from different people saying that they've listened.
That is a preposterous exaggeration.
Okay, maybe not 75, but a lot of emails from people who say they enjoy listening to us. So I just want Rabbi Shapiro to know that when he's going through his emails and saying, oh, I have so many emails back from Thanksgiving, I just want him to know that he asked for it.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Everybody, Shabbat
emails coming in everywhere from Belgium to Belize talking about how much they love our nonsense each week. Yes.
All right.
From
Okay,
Chile to China. The emails will be pouring in.
Shabbat Shalom.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.